Okay, mic check, mic check. Alright, so we're gonna build a cave system. The map that I'm currently in right now is called Dark Room. As you can see, it is a dark room. So, yeah. Alright, so what we're gonna do before we even begin to build anything, we need to make sure that our workspace is well lit. So what I'm gonna do is spawn a light without a rope. Alright. Now, press the V key to go into no clip mode so that you can freely fly around the map and, have as much work room as you could possibly need. As far as for why you can't see my player model, and that's because I have, an invisible player model enabled. I typically like using the invisible player model because whenever it comes to, making animations, comics, whatever, it really makes it to where, you don't have to worry about your player model getting in the way of like a camera shot or anything like that, or even if you don't feel like moving, around, with the camera and all that stuff, but it makes things, it's simply put, it makes things a lot easier. Alright, now that we have our lighted workspace, there's a creepy, weird, stretched out face texture at the top of this place, but what I usually do is we're gonna scroll down to Map Retexturizer. This is just regular develop material, dev material. So we're gonna take this little slider, put it all the way down. That'll make things completely invisible. So now that we have that, we're going to click, and weird face texture is gone. So now that that's taken care of, what we're gonna do first is go to our add-ons, scroll down here a bit, and as far as the cave system that I had featured in the little comic that I made, the concept, for the cave system, I used, where is it? The Battlefield 5 Pacific props, some of them. So what I'm gonna do is, let's make a small cave. Let's make a small cave. So as you can see here, this is a, small little cave space. Nothing too spectacular, but as you can see, like right now, it looks a bit, just pretty bland, pretty boring. But we're gonna make this look a lot cooler. So, now that we have this, we are going to add a bit more effects to this. And pay in mind, this is technically not a prop. If you see this little circle here, this means that the add-on is an effect rather than a prop. Props have physics, effects typically don't. The only thing that has physics, if you could even call it that, is this little ring here. But considering that it still can collide with, the world around, we're going to right-click it with the No Collide World tool. Hold on. Let's see. Hold on. Kind of messed up there. Sorry about that. Right-click it. And as you can see, it has this orange glow around it. That means that it can't collide with the world anymore. See, pretty much. But we don't need it going that deep. So we're going to put it just deep enough so that we can work with it. This ought to be a good spot. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is set up a camera. If you're trying to make like any artwork, animations, your camera is important. I don't typically use the default camera. I use the advanced camera. That way you can get, you know, near Z, far Z roll, field of view. But as far as the roll, you can just do that, you know, with the physics gun. So you don't really have to do too much with that. But let's spawn a camera. And let's see. I have my camera set to number pad 0. And for anyone who's curious, yes, you can still move around while holding the camera in camera mode so that you can get a better perspective of, you know, the overall layout of, you know, your picture, you know, if you have any ragdolls, things like that. It may look a little wonky once you get back into like your developer's point of view, but that's okay. It doesn't matter about what you see as the developer. It all matters about, you know, what the camera is seeing, because at the end product, pretty much what your viewers are going to see is what the camera sees, and that's all that matters. Always remember this. Okay, guess this is a good spot. We'll just keep it here for now. Alright, so now that we have our camera set up and our little cave system set up here, what I'm going to do is spawn some props here, and we're gonna work from there. Alright, now that we have a few props laid out here, and some of these were from the Yukon Predator props pack for, like, you know, cave systems and overall nature, and then the rocks here are from Team Fortress 2. That's, you know, if you have the game installed, it's free to play, by the way. The game installed, you know, you can have all of the, you know, props, textures, everything. Okay, so now that we have our stuff here, some of the stuff, what we're gonna do is, just like I just, you know, did, is right-click everything here so that they won't collide with one another. This is not no collide world, but if you want to have a little bit more precision and make it look a little more believable, if it makes it more comfortable for you, you can use no collide world. But pay in mind, sometimes with certain maps like Dark World, or excuse me, Dark Room, for example, the effects, if you put it too far into the world, you won't be able to grab it back out. So that's a, you know, that's a fair warning. But what we're gonna do is pretty much put this nice little piece here. Looks really good. We're gonna put that in here. So right now I'm in developer's point of view, but now this is what the camera sees, and as you can see, I can freely just move this around anywhere I want to. So what I'm gonna do is, let's see, maybe put the rocky surface maybe around here and make it look like it's coming out of the ground. And if things like, if you need to like adjust your camera, move it out a bit, or even if you just want to like adjust the camera angle, you know, in itself, you can. It's all about your own perspective and, you know, pretty much what you want to happen and what you want it to look like. But yeah, let's probably move it a little more like that. Okay, so now that we've moved that out a little bit, here, probably scoot it up just a tad bit like that and put it down. All right, so now that we have this done, let's go back into developer's perspective and pay in mind, again, if nothing actually, you know, if not so much nothing, but if things don't look quite right, or if the prop doesn't, you know, like fit what you want or fit the aesthetic that you're trying to go for, don't be afraid to, you know, just delete the prop, you know, from what you're trying to do, and, you know, just try something else. So let's see here. From this point of view, we can't really see this. So what I'm gonna do is, let's see, probably see how this looks on the outside. I mean, this doesn't look too bad, but it collides with the world a bit too much. So I'm gonna make it not collide with the world and put that to where it looks like it's just barely lurking in the background. And that's another important thing. When it comes to cave systems, there's a lot not just happening within one portion of a cave. There's also things that you might see in the background. So pay in mind, that's another thing to really think about. Okay, here's a big chunk of rock. Big chunk of rock here. Let's see if we can give this a nice blend. So what I call a blend is when you mix two props and or effects together to make it look like they belong together, if that makes any sense. Like, for example, if we just use it by itself, it could work, but at the same time, when we blend it together like this, looks like the rock formation is coming out of, you know, the semi-grassy terrain. So, yeah, and as you can see, I can also put it out a little more, just like that. All right, so now that we've properly blended these two together, what I'm gonna do is place these things around and see what we can do. As far as these rocks here, I'm going to most likely resize them with the effect resizer. So I'm gonna scale these down, and once I do that, then we'll keep on building from there. And before I go into, it, just letting you guys watch and see, I want to let you know, if you don't want to keep on going back and forth to the menu to reselect, if you have specific properties, if you have specific properties for an effect or prop, like if something already has no collision and you want that same thing, or even like a specific size, you can just use the duplicator to duplicate the exact same thing, like so, and you have those exact same properties. Like, I made it to where that couldn't collide with anything, so now this one has the exact same properties, same prop, boom, you're done. Alright, so I'm gonna work with this, and hopefully you guys will just watch and enjoy. All right. So, now that we have our little cave decked out with, you know, all the rocks and everything, what we're gonna do now is gonna take some of the mushrooms from the game's security breach ruin and place them in various spots all around the cave. So let's get some of all three sizes, the ones that actually glow. Pay in mind, you can get all of this FNAF stuff in the Gmod workshop, and it's called the Gmod FNAF bundle. It comes with, you know, props, ragdolls, effects. It has pretty much, if you're a FNAF fan and you make FNAF content, this is a very great add-on to have. So that's just something to put out there. All right, so what we're gonna do is, now that I have the duplicator loaded and ready, take each mushroom of each size and make sure to freeze it so it's, you know, just floating there. All right, now that we have that, let's go back to the duplicator. Considering what I said beforehand with how the duplicator pretty much allows you to copy paste, you know, settings from any prop or anything. So as you can see how it's floating in the air, if you put it there, boom, floating in the air, and see, you can just layer, layer, layer. But we're gonna do that in the cave with these mushrooms now. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Okay, now as you can see, we have the mushrooms placed all around, just like that. So you can see that there's a lot of the little circles all over the place. If you want to, you know, get them out of the way, if they're, you know, obstructing your view, you can press the C button, go to the top panel up here where it says drawing, and where it says draw effect rings, you can just click it and you won't see them anymore. But if you're not as advanced with this technique in knowing, you know, where each item is, then I wouldn't recommend it, but if you know what you're doing, then you know what you're doing. So now that we have, you know, mushrooms and all of the cave stuff placed around, now what we need to do is we're going to work on our lighting. As far as these lights right here, these are just work lights, so you can, you know, get a feel for everything that you're doing. And make sure that you know, toggle a button, you know, make a button toggleable to where you can turn the lights off, on, whenever you need to. But as you can see here, this is what it looks like with just base lighting. So, and yes, the mushrooms, they glow in the dark. So that's a pretty cool feature. But what we're gonna do is, instead of using the light, we're gonna go to lamps. All right. So now that we're in the lamps property, what we're gonna do is we need an overall color to light the cave. So field of view is pretty much how wide you want the lighting to go. Distance is how far the light itself can travel. And brightness is self-explanatory, how bright you want your light to be. So, considering that this is a deep, dark cave, let's go to blue, and don't forget you can use the little slider here to get, you know, any settings that you want. We're gonna do probably a nice dark, dreary, like a sort of like navy grayish blue. So what I typically do, and I know it's probably different for everyone else, but what I typically do is before spawning the lamp, so that I can get a better perspective of what I'm doing, I'm gonna pretty much dim the lights, spawn the lamp, and as you can see, I can grab it, and so that we can get an overall feel for the lighting, what we're gonna do is put it upside down just like how I did and go up, up, up. And this is what the cave looks like now with, you know, the dreary lighting. Now, it looks good, but if you notice, the background is a little too well lit. So what we're gonna do about that is we're going to go over to our lamp, and considering the distance of the lamp is facing downwards, so the distance is not the issue. It's the field of view. As you can see, the circumference is covering way too far, and this is a deep, dark cave, so we're gonna have to make the field of view a little less. And you can also, you know, go to camera view, but make sure your mouse is, you know, still pointing at the lamp. So when we go into camera view, you can press the context menu, the C button. Field of view, let's try 104/62. So, oh, darn. Well, looks like I dropped the lamp because I forgot to go into lamp mode, but that's okay. Things happen. It's, you know, something to get used to. Even a person like me with over 10 plus years of experience using Gmod, we make mistakes. All right, so let's go back and do that again. Get it back where we can see the cave, everything around inside. Well, not everything, but most of it. Okay, let's go back to doing that. Okay, so now that we have this again, hopefully this time I won't drop it, let's go back to lamps. Now we can do this. All right, go to the camera view, field of view, 104. Now, field of view is a bit too small, so best thing to do is just keep playing around with it. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. Okay. Now, you can see how the background is becoming a little more well lit. It was looking pretty good around this. Let's see here. Yeah, probably just a little bit darker. A little darker. There we go. Okay, now that we have the base lighting for the cave done, we're going to add the glowy effect for the mushrooms. So let's go back to our lamps and get a nice glowy green color for those mushrooms. Let's see here. Probably not this green. Let's make it a little more blue. Let's slide that up just a little more like a minty green. Okay, let's see here. That's better. All right, now the field of view for this is a bit too much and the distance is way too far. So let's scale that down and we're gonna play around with it, see how that looks. Okay, so now that we have this, let's go up, up, up. See how that looks in camera mode. You can move the lamp around. If you need to move it around to any specific area, you can. So the best thing to do when it comes to lighting is you want to make sure that you have a good feel of like what you want, how you want things to look. Pretty much, you know, the whole gist of that. So as you can see, we're starting to get a bit of the glow, but looks like we need a little more distance and slightly higher field of view. So what I'm gonna do as of right now, we're gonna play around with the lighting and get this cave well lit. So hang tight for the ride. Okay, now that we have our lighting done, we're gonna add some fog. Now, the fog that I have, it's in the prop pack called Extra Foliage. And this is it right here, but I already have one that's duplicated with no collision and resized to a pretty big size. So, what I'm gonna do is, hang on, for now, redraw the effect rings. Now, gonna put probably 2, 3, 4 here. Okay, so as far as the effect resizer, I'm going to reset these to their original size, but these are sized to where they're a bit bigger. So as you can see, this is what the build looks like with, hang on, let's go into camera mode really quick. This is what the build looks like with work lights on and with lamps. But again, we're trying to go for, you know, a cave setting, so we need some, you know, some ambient fog. So what we're gonna do is, first and foremost, get out of camera mode really quick. Alright, let's take this patch of fog here, and this patch of fog, here, let me turn the flashlight on so you can see. This patch of fog it's pretty sizable, and it's two-sided, so if you want bigger fog, smaller fog, it all depends on what size you want to use. So I'm going to probably go for bigger fog, so we're going to use this size. So let me turn the flashlight off, and let's move it outward a bit so that, you know, we can see what we're doing. Alright, back into camera mode we go, but, oh, almost forgot. Let's do this really quick, and just make it a habit if you're, you know, if you're willing to, you know, turn it off and on again so that things won't be in your way so you can actually see what you're doing. So let's turn the lights off and back into, let's go back into this mode here. Alright, so as you can see, with the bigger fog, there's a lot to see. So let's move that out a little bit. Alright, gives it a nice kind of like obstructed view. Not sure if you can actually see this on you guys' end, but this gives a lot of, you know, well actually, you know what, hang on. Let's retry that. Oh, no, we're not doing weapons. Sorry about that. Sometimes my pointer does that. I'm using a laptop, so pretty much the touchpad gets a bit wonky at times, but what can you do? Alright, so there we go. Got some green smoke, green fog going around here. So what I'm gonna do is, this right here, it looks pretty good, but we're gonna go back to the effect resizer. Now instead of making it small, we're gonna make it twice its size, so just put the number 2. Press that, and let's see what we can do here. Now it gives that really, really, really cool green glowy effect. Alright, so this is what I'm going to do as far as making the fog. So again, just sit back, relax, and enjoy. Okay, we have our fog, we have lighting, everything is placed in its proper area, camera set up. So, let's go into camera mode. Alright, now that we've gotten the camera up, we can't see any of the little rings or anything like that. Now we're going to be ready to take our snapshot. So, this is what things look like with just the work light. And now that you've put everything into place, let's turn the lights off. This is what you get right after you're done. So now that we have our cave set up here, now we just click and take a snapshot of our artwork. And there we have it, our own little cave system. So, what I typically like to do whenever I have a finished product of something is I stay on this specific screen where, I want to take the snapshot and go to saves. So now I can just save the game, and once everything saves, it will be saved right there. So you'll know, okay, this is the finished product. I don't have to do any more edits, or if I want to come back to this for something later on, like whether it be, like I said, a comic or an animation, you can always know that, okay, this is the finished product. I can easily go back and use it for something in the future. All right, I hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, have our little cave system. If you want to know how to build anything else in Garry's mod, just let me know in the comments. I'll see you all later, and have a great, great day.